Have you ever loved someone so much that you became invisible to yourself? Have you ever given so completely that there was nothing left of you to give? What would you do if the person you sacrificed everything for looked you in the eye and told you they couldn't wait for you to disappear? My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore, and I'm about to tell you the story of how my daughter's cruelty became my freedom. 3 days before Christmas, my daughter sat across from me at my own kitchen table and said the words that would change everything. "Mom, honestly, the best thing you could do for me right now is just not be here anymore. Do you know how much easier my life would be if you were just gone?" She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather, like she was telling me she preferred tea over coffee. Her eyes never left her phone screen as she spoke. I felt my heart stop. The coffee cup in my hand trembled, but I didn't drop it. I couldn't, because in that moment, something crystallized inside me with perfect, terrible clarity. She meant it. Every single word. My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I am 64 years old. I was a registered nurse for 38 years, spending most of my career in the pediatric intensive care unit at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. I've held dying children in my arms. I've comforted parents through the worst moments of their lives. I've worked double shifts, triple shifts, holidays, birthdays, every Thanksgiving for 20 years straight. I came from nothing. My mother, Helen, was a hotel maid. My father, Robert, drove a delivery truck for a bakery. We lived in a cramped apartment in Rogers Park where the heating barely worked in winter and the summers were unbearable. But my parents, they believed in education. They believed in hard work. They believed that I could be more than they were. "Maggie," my mother used to say, smoothing down my hair before school, "you're going to be somebody. You're going to help people. That's what makes life worth living." I believed her. I studied until my eyes burned. I worked 2 jobs to pay for nursing school. I graduated at the top of my class in 1982, and I did help people, thousands of them over nearly 4 decades. But somewhere along the way, in trying to give my daughter everything I never had, I created a monster. And 3 days before Christmas 2024, that monster told me she wished I was dead. I met Daniel Whitmore in 1985. I was 25 working night shifts at the hospital. He was a pharmaceutical sales representative who came in during the day. We kept missing each other until one day we literally collided in the hospital cafeteria. He spilled coffee all over my scrubs, apologized profusely, and offered to buy me dinner to make up for it. He was charming, ambitious, and kind. Or at least, I thought he was kind. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. The wedding was small, just our families and a few close friends. We couldn't afford anything fancy, and I didn't care. I was in love with the idea of building a life together. We moved into a small house in Evanston. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I continued working at Northwestern, taking on extra shifts whenever I could. Daniel's career was taking off. He was making good money, traveling for work, bringing home stories of fancy dinners with doctors and hospital administrators. When I got pregnant in 1988, I was over the moon. We were going to be parents. I was going to give this child everything: love, security, opportunities one never had. Natalie Rose Whitmore was born on April 3, 1989. The labor was difficult, lasting 22 hours. When they finally placed her in my arms, I looked down at her tiny, perfect face and made a promise. "I will never let you struggle the way I did. I will give you the world." I should have known better. I should have remembered what my own mother taught me: that struggle builds character, that earning something makes it valuable, that love without boundaries becomes indulgence. But I didn't. I was determined to be the perfect mother, to provide everything, to smooth every rough edge from my daughter's path. The first few years were beautiful. Natalie was a bright, curious child. She talked early, walked early, seemed to absorb everything around her. I reduced my hours at the hospital to part-time, so I could be home with her more. Daniel's income was enough to cover us, though money was always tight. When Natalie was 5, Daniel sat me down with a serious expression. "Margaret, we need to talk about your job." "What about it?" I asked, confused. "I think you should go back to full-time. I want to start my own consulting business, but I need startup capital. If you're working full-time, we can save faster." I hesitated. "But Natalie needs me home. She's in kindergarten all day now. She doesn't need you hovering. This is about our future, Margaret. Our family's future." So I went back to full-time. Then, when Daniel's business struggled in the first year, I started taking overtime. Then night shifts. Then weekend shifts. Whatever it took to keep us afloat while Daniel built his empire. Except the empire never materialized. Daniel's consulting business limped along for 3 years before he quietly shut it down and went back to pharmaceutical sales. But by then, the pattern was set. I was the breadwinner, working 50, 60, sometimes 70 hours a week. And Natalie? Natalie was being raised by babysitters, after-school programs, and eventually, her own devices. I tried to compensate. I really did. Every day off, I was hers completely. I threw elaborate birthday parties. I bought her the toys she wanted, the clothes she admired, the electronics she begged for. When she was 12 and wanted to go to a private middle school because all her friends were going there, I picked up an extra weekend shift to cover the tuition. "Mom, you're the best," she'd say, hugging me. And I'd feel like maybe, just maybe, I was doing something right. Daniel and I divorced when Natalie was 14. It wasn't dramatic. We'd been living parallel lives for years, barely seeing each other, barely speaking. He'd been having an affair with someone from work. I wasn't even surprised. "You were never here anyway," he said when he moved out. "You were always at that hospital, choosing strangers over your own family." The irony was suffocating. I was at the hospital working myself to the bone for them, for him, for Natalie's private school and dance classes and summer camps. The divorce was messy only in terms of assets. Daniel wanted half of everything, including the house I'd paid the mortgage on for 15 years. My lawyer fought hard, but in the end, I had to refinance and buy him out. It wiped out most of my savings. Natalie, at 14, made her choice clear. "I'm staying with you, Mom. Dad's girlfriend is weird, and you have the bigger house." Not because she loved me more. Because I had the bigger house. When Natalie started looking at colleges, she had her heart set on out-of-state schools. Expensive out-of-state schools. "Mom, I need to get away from Chicago. I need to experience something different. Everyone says Northwestern is amazing." "Northwestern is $60,000 a year, Natalie. I can't afford that." Her face fell. Those big blue eyes filled with tears. "So you're saying I have to stay here? Go to some cheap state school because you won't help me." "I'm not saying I won't help. I'm saying we need to be realistic. There are excellent schools we can afford, or you can take out student loans and..." "Loans? You want me to start my life buried in debt?" The guilt was crushing. Wasn't that exactly what I'd promised? That she'd never struggle the way I had? So I made it work. I took out a Parent Plus loan. I picked up even more overtime. I started working holidays again, volunteering for every shift no one else wanted. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's Eve. If it paid time and a half, I was there. Natalie went to her dream school. She joined a sorority. She studied communications and marketing. She called me once a week, usually when she needed money. "Mom, my meal plan ran out." "Mom, I need new clothes for recruitment." "Mom, my laptop died." "Mom, there's this study abroad program in Italy." And every time I said yes. Every single time. I wore the same scrubs I'd worn for 5 years. I drove a 2006 Honda Civic with a crack in the windshield I never fixed. I ate ramen and canned soup at home, so I could wire another $500 to my daughter's account. When she graduated in 2011, I was so proud I cried. I drove 6 hours to attend the ceremony. I watched her walk across that stage in her cap and gown, her sorority stole around her neck, smiling and waving. She looked happy. She looked successful. She barely glanced at me in the crowd. After graduation, Natalie moved back to Chicago. Not with me, of course. She wanted her own apartment in Lincoln Park, one of the trendiest neighborhoods in the city. "Mom, I can't live with you. I'm an adult now. I need my independence." "Of course, honey. But apartments in Lincoln Park are very expensive. Maybe we could find you something more affordable until you get established in your career." She looked at me like I'd suggested she live in a cardboard box. "Mom, I have to live somewhere that reflects who I am. Image matters in my field. Besides, you always said you wanted me to have better than you did." There it was. My own words, weaponized against me. I co-signed the lease. The rent was $1,800 a month, more than my mortgage payment. Natalie assured me she'd cover it once she found a job. The job hunt lasted 3 months. Then she got hired as a marketing coordinator at a small firm. The salary was $38,000 a year. After taxes, her take-home barely covered rent and utilities, let alone food, transportation, and the lifestyle she wanted to maintain. "Mom, I can't survive on this salary. It's impossible. Maybe you could get a roommate?" That would cut your rent in half. A roommate? Mom, I'm not in college anymore. I need my own space. So I helped. A few hundred here, a few hundred there. Groceries. The electric bill. Her car insurance. It was temporary, I told myself. Just until she got on her feet. But Natalie never got on her feet. She got comfortable instead. She stayed at that marketing job for 2 years, never asking for a raise, never pushing for advancement. Why would she? Between her salary and my contributions, she was living the life she wanted. In 2013, she announced she was quitting to start her own social media consulting business. Mom, this is the future. Companies are desperate for people who understand Instagram and Twitter. I can make so much more on my own. But honey, don't you think you should save some money first? Build up a client base while you still have steady income. Mom, you don't understand entrepreneurship. You have to take risks. You can't play it safe. She quit her job. I supported her through the startup phase. New laptop, new phone, professional headshots, website design, business cards. She needed an office space to meet clients. I paid the deposit and first 3 months' rent on a small office in a co-working building. The business lasted 8 months. She got exactly 3 clients, all of them friends from college who paid her minimally and eventually stopped calling her back. It's not my fault, Mom. The market is oversaturated. I was ahead of the curve, but now everyone thinks they can do social media marketing. Next, she wanted to try event planning. Then life coaching. Then she got certified as a yoga instructor, which required a $3,000 training course I paid for. That lasted 6 months before she decided it wasn't fulfilling her true purpose. Each failure, each pivoted career, each new passion project, I funded them all. Because I was her mother. Because I'd promised her she'd never struggle. Because every time I hesitated, she'd look at me with those wounded eyes and say, I thought you believed in me. By 2016, I had been working at Northwestern for over 30 years. My body was starting to feel it. The 12-hour shifts, the constant standing, lifting patients, the stress. I had developed arthritis in my knees and chronic back pain. I was 56 years old and I felt 70. But I couldn't retire. I had no retirement savings. Everything I earned went to bills, to the mortgage, and to Natalie. In March 2017, my mother, Helen, passed away. She was 84. She'd been living in a nursing home for the past 2 years after a fall left her unable to care for herself. I'd been paying for the nursing home because her Social Security and my father's pension didn't cover the full cost. My father had died 10 years earlier. Now my mother was gone too, and I felt unmoored like I'd lost my anchor. At the funeral, Natalie showed up 20 minutes late wearing sunglasses and looking at her phone. She gave me a quick hug, sat in the back, and left immediately after the service. She didn't come to the cemetery. She said she had an important meeting with a potential client. 3 days after my mother's funeral, while I was still taking bereavement leave from work, Natalie called me. Mom, I need to talk to you about something important. My heart clenched. Maybe she was calling to check on me, to see how I was holding up. Maybe she'd noticed how devastated I was. What is it, honey? So, you know how Grandma's gone now? Yes, Natalie. I buried her 3 days ago. Right. So here's the thing. You were paying for her nursing home, right? Like every month. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Yes, I was helping with her care. Okay, so now that she's, not here anymore, that means you have extra money every month, right? Like an extra $2,000 or whatever it was. My blood ran cold. Natalie, are you seriously asking me this right now? I'm just saying, you have extra money now, and I'm really struggling. My rent went up, and I've been putting off some dental work that I really need done, and your grandmother just died. I know, Mom, and I'm sad about that. But life goes on, and I have real needs right now. Grandma would want you to help me. She always said family takes care of family. I hung up on her. It was the first time in my life I'd ever done that. I sat on my couch in the house that was too big and too empty, and I cried for 3 hours straight. But 2 days later, when she called again and apologized, saying she'd been stressed and handled it badly, I forgave her. And a week after that, when she needed $600 for that dental work, I sent it to her. Because that's what I did. I always sent the money. In 2019, Natalie was 30 years old. She'd been bouncing between jobs and entrepreneurial ventures for 8 years. She was working part-time at a boutique clothing store while building her brand as a lifestyle influencer on Instagram. Mom, I need to talk to you about my living situation. Here we go again, I thought. My lease is up in 3 months, and my landlord is raising the rent by $200. I can't afford it. I've been looking for new places, but everything decent is so expensive. Maybe it's time to consider a smaller apartment? Something more affordable. Mom, I can't downgrade. My followers expect a certain aesthetic. My apartment is part of my brand. Natalie, you have 3,000 followers. Most of them are people from high school and college. Her face hardened. You've never supported my dreams. You've never believed I could make something of myself. The words stung because they were so absurdly untrue. I'd supported nothing but her dreams for 30 years. What do you need, Natalie? I was thinking, what if you bought a condo? As an investment, I could live there, and it would be building equity for you instead of just throwing away rent money. It's actually a smart financial move. I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But I was tired. I was 59 years old, working full-time still dealing with chronic pain. The idea of having a tangible asset, something to show for all these years of struggle, appealed to me. I don't have money for a down payment, Natalie. You could take out a loan against the house, or use a first-time investor program. Mom, please. This could change everything. I'd have stability, you'd have an investment. It's perfect. I talked to a financial advisor. He strongly recommended against it. My retirement savings were minimal. I was planning to work until 65, maybe even 70 at this rate. Taking on another mortgage would be devastating. But Natalie was relentless. She sent me listings every day. She calculated how much equity I'd build. She painted pictures of how this would secure both our futures. I bought a 2-bedroom condo in Lakeview for $285,000. I put down $15,000, which I borrowed against my house, and took out a mortgage for the rest. The monthly payment was $1,650. Natalie moved in immediately. She was supposed to pay me $800 a month to help with the mortgage. She made exactly 3 payments in the first 3 months, then stopped. Mom, things are really tight right now. Can you cover me just this month? I'll pay you back. She never paid me back. Not that month, not any month after. I paid the full mortgage on a condo I didn't live in while my daughter lived there rent-free. And it got worse. In 2020, during the early days of the pandemic, Natalie called me crying. Mom, I lost my job at the boutique. They had to close down. I have no income. I'm going to lose everything. My heart broke for her. The pandemic was devastating for so many people. It's okay, honey. We'll figure this out together. Have you applied for unemployment? Yes, but it's taking forever to process. Mom, I need help now. I can't wait weeks for the government to get their act together. How much do you need? I don't know. Maybe. Could we set up a joint account? Just temporarily, so I can access money for groceries and bills without having to ask you every single time? It would be easier for both of us. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like I was treating her like an adult, giving her dignity and independence. We opened a joint checking account. I deposited $2,000 to start. I told her it was for emergencies only, that I'd add more each month to help her through the pandemic. Over the next 4 years, that account became a bleeding wound in my finances. I deposited anywhere from $500 to $1,000 every single month. Natalie withdrew it almost immediately. Sometimes for legitimate expenses, groceries, utilities, car repairs. More often for things I'd discover later. Expensive dinners, new clothes, spa days, concert tickets. I'd check the balance and find it at zero, sometimes even negative with overdraft fees. Natalie, the account is overdrawn again. Mom, I told you I had emergency expenses. My car needed new tires. For $800? They were good tires, Mom. Safe tires. Would you rather I drive on bald tires and get in an accident? Always an explanation. Always just plausible enough that I couldn't quite prove she was lying. By 2024, I was 64 years old. I'd been planning to retire at 65, but my financial advisor sat me down and gave me the brutal truth. Margaret, at your current rate of spending and with your current assets, you cannot afford to retire. You have $47,000 in your 401k. Your house has about $60,000 in equity. The condo is underwater because property values dropped. You're carrying debt on both properties. If you retire now, you'll be living on Social Security alone, and it won't be enough. How much longer do I need to work? He looked uncomfortable. Honestly, until 75 minimum. Maybe longer. 75. Another 11 years of 12-hour shifts with arthritic knees and a bad back. Another 11 years of watching people younger than me advance in their careers while I stayed stuck in the same position because I didn't have the energy or time to pursue advancement. I felt something inside me begin to crack. It was a Tuesday in early December 2024. I had the day off, a rare occurrence. I'd been thinking about the joint account, about how much money I'd been putting in and how little Natalie seemed to be progressing in her life. I logged into the account and downloaded the last 6 months of transactions. What I saw made my stomach turn. Charges at high-end restaurants. $157 at RPM Italian, $203 at Girl and the Goat, $178 at Alinea. Multiple charges at Sephora, each over $100. Charges at boutique clothing stores. A $450 charge at a spa. A $380 charge at a salon. This wasn't survival spending. This wasn't emergency money. This was the spending of someone living a lifestyle she couldn't afford, subsidized entirely by me. I called her immediately. Natalie, we need to talk about the joint account. What about it? Her voice was already defensive. I'm looking at the charges. You spent $203 at Girl and the Goat last month? That money is supposed to be for necessities. It was a work dinner, Mom. I was networking. Work dinner? Natalie, you work part-time at a yoga studio. Who were you networking with? Other people in the wellness industry. You wouldn't understand. I understand that I'm working myself into the ground so you can eat $200 meals. Here we go again. Everything you do for me, you throw in my face. You know what, Mom? I didn't ask to be born. You chose to have me. You chose to be a mother. That comes with responsibilities. I was so shocked I couldn't respond. She hung up on me. I sat there staring at my phone at this transaction history, and something shifted. A voice in my head, my mother's voice maybe, whispered, "What are you doing, Margaret? What have you become?" I decided to do something I'd never done before. I decided to investigate. I had a friend from the hospital, Linda Chun, whose husband ran a private investigation firm. We'd worked together for 15 years before she retired. I called her the next day. "Linda, I need advice. It's about Natalie." I told her everything. The joint account, the expenses, the feeling that I was being lied to systematically. "Oh, Margaret," she said, her voice full of sympathy. "Honey, you need documentation. Hard evidence. Let me talk to my husband." 2 days later, I met with Marcus Chun in a small coffee shop in the Loop. He was a kind man with graying hair and gentle eyes that had probably seen every type of human behavior imaginable. "Mrs. Whitmore, I want to be straight with you. What you're describing sounds like financial exploitation. But if you want to take action, you need proof. I can help you gather that proof, but it won't be cheap, and it might hurt to see what I find." "How much?" I asked. $1,200 for 1 week of surveillance and financial investigation. I'll track her spending patterns, her activities, document everything with photos and video. It was a lot of money, but I'd been hemorrhaging money for years. What was another $1,200 if it meant finally understanding the truth? "Do it," I said. For 1 week, Marcus followed my daughter. What he came back with destroyed every last illusion I'd been clinging to. Photos of Natalie at expensive restaurants, laughing with friends. Not work dinners. Not networking. Just expensive meals with people who clearly weren't struggling. Photos of her at a high-end gym that cost $200 a month, when she'd told me she couldn't afford a gym membership. Photos of her shopping at Nordstrom, carrying bags from stores I couldn't afford to walk into. But the worst part was the audio. Marcus had managed to record a conversation between Natalie and a friend at a wine bar. The quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. "How do you afford all this?" the friend asked. "I thought you were working part-time at that yoga place." Natalie laughed. It was a sound I'd heard 1,000 times, but hearing it in this context made it sound cruel. "I am, but my mom covers everything. Honestly, it's like having a trust fund without the paperwork." "Wait, really? Your mom just pays for everything?" "Pretty much. I just tell her I'm struggling, and she sends money. She feels guilty because she worked so much when I was a kid. I mean, she chose to be a nurse. She chose to work all those hours. The least she can do is help me now, right? Doesn't she ever say no?" "Never. She's terrified of losing me. After my dad left and my grandma died, I'm all she has. She'll never cut me off because then she'd be completely alone. It's kind of sad, actually, but it works for me." The friend laughed. "That's genius. I wish my mom was like that. Trust me, it has its downsides. She's always calling, always wanting to check in. She's so needy. But I just ignore her calls until I need something. Then I'm like, "Hi, Mom, sorry I've been so busy." And she eats it up. When Marcus played me that recording, I had to ask him to stop it halfway through. I ran to his office bathroom and threw up. I stood there, gripping the sink, looking at my reflection. 64 years old. Deep lines around my eyes and mouth. Gray hair I didn't have time to color. I looked exhausted because I was exhausted. And my daughter, the person I'd sacrificed everything for, thought I was a pathetic ATM she could manipulate with fake apologies and manufactured crises. I went back to Marcus's office, dried my eyes, and asked him to continue. He showed me credit card statements he'd obtained through legal channels. I was a co-signer on 2 of Natalie's credit cards, something I'd forgotten about from years ago when I'd helped her build credit. The balances were staggering. One card had $18,000 in charges. The other had $23,000. Both were maxed out. As a co-signer, I was legally responsible for this debt. "There's more," Marcus said gently. "She took out a personal loan 6 months ago. She listed you as a co-signer. I don't know if you remember signing anything." I thought back. 6 months ago, Natalie had brought over some routine paperwork for the condo, asked me to sign a few things without really explaining them. I'd been exhausted from a double shift, and I'd signed without reading carefully. "How much?" I whispered. $15,000. She's made 2 payments and defaulted on the rest. They're going to start collection proceedings soon. Against both of you. I felt like I was drowning. Over $56,000 in debt that I didn't even know existed, all in my name or tied to my name. "What can I do?" I asked. Marcus pulled out a folder. "First, you need a good lawyer. Second, you need to close that joint account immediately. Third, you need to protect your assets before this gets worse. I have all the evidence you need to prove fraud and forgery." I took the folder. Inside was everything. Photos, audio recordings, financial documents, timelines, everything organized with brutal efficiency. "Thank you, Marcus." "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, stopping me at the door. "I've been doing this for 25 years. I've seen a lot of financial abuse, usually from spouses or romantic partners. But adult children exploiting their parents? That's particularly cruel. You don't deserve this. Nobody does." I nodded, unable to speak, and left. I found a lawyer through a referral from the hospital's legal department. Her name was Jessica Rothstein, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in elder financial abuse and estate law. "Elder abuse?" I said when we first met. "I'm only 64. Elder abuse legally covers anyone over 60, she explained. "And what your daughter is doing absolutely qualifies. Financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, fraudulent use of your signature. This is textbook abuse." I showed her everything Marcus had gathered. She went through it methodically, making notes, asking questions. "Mrs. Whitmore, you have an ironclad case here. You can pursue criminal charges for the forgery. You can sue for restitution. You can have yourself removed as co-signer on these debts, though you may have to prove fraud to do that." "I don't want to send my daughter to prison," I said quietly. Jessica looked at me with something like pity. "I understand, but you need to protect yourself. At minimum, we need to do the following. Close the joint account, remove yourself as co-signer through fraud claims, secure your assets, and create a legal barrier between your finances and hers." "Can I evict her from the condo?" "The condo is in your name?" "Yes. I own it outright." "Well, the mortgage is in my name." "Then yes. You can issue an eviction notice. Given the fraud and financial abuse, we can make this happen quickly, within 30 days. "And my will? She's currently my only heir." Jessica's expression hardened. "We can change that. You can disinherit her based on the evidence of financial exploitation. Your assets can go to charity, other relatives, or anyone you choose." "How long will all this take?" 2 weeks to prepare the documents. Another week to file everything. The eviction will take 30 days from notice. The co-signer removal will take longer, but we can get a court order to prevent further damage to your credit in the meantime. I sat there, thinking about what I was about to do. This would destroy my relationship with my daughter. But then again, what relationship did we really have? One where she used me, lied to me, mocked me behind my back? "Do it," I said. "All of it. There's one more thing you should consider," Jessica said. "You should tell her yourself first. Not the legal details, but that you're done. Give yourself that closure before the paperwork arrives. You mean confront her? Yes. On your terms, in a controlled environment. Tell her you know what she's been doing. Tell her it's over. Then walk away. The legal process will follow, but you'll have had your say. The thought terrified me. But also, in a strange way, it felt necessary. Like a final conversation before a door closed forever. I decided to do it on December 22nd. 3 days before Christmas. Poetic in a terrible way. I called Natalie and asked her to meet me at my house. Not the condo. My house. My territory. She showed up 40 minutes late, as usual. She walked in wearing a new coat I knew I hadn't paid for, carrying a designer handbag I recognized from a boutique window downtown. Hey, Mom. What's up? I can't stay long, I have plans tonight. Sit down, Natalie. Something in my tone made her pause. She sat on the couch, pulling out her phone. Put the phone away. Look at me. She did, with an expression of annoyance. Mom, what is this about? I know everything. Her face didn't change. Know what? I know about the restaurants. The shopping. The gym membership. The credit card debt. The loan you forged my signature on. Everything. Now her face changed. The color drained from it. Mom, I can explain. No, you can't. Because I also heard you. Talking to your friend at that wine bar. Laughing about how you manipulate me. How I'm your personal ATM. How pathetic I am. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For once, she had nothing to say. Do you have any idea, I continued, my voice shaking but steady, what you've done to my life? I'm 64 years old, Natalie. I should be retiring. Instead, I have to work until I'm 75, maybe older, because I have nothing saved. Nothing. Because every penny I earned for 40 years went to you. Mom, I never asked you to. Yes, you did. Every single day, you asked. Every crisis, every emergency, every new dream, you asked, and I gave because I loved you. Because I thought I was helping you build a life. But I wasn't helping you. I was enabling you to become a selfish, manipulative person who sees her own mother as nothing more than a source of money. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. You know what the worst part is? I blamed myself. I thought maybe I'd been too strict, not supportive enough, too critical. I thought if I just gave more, loved more, sacrificed more, you'd finally be happy. You'd finally see me. But you don't see me at all, do you? Mom, that's not fair. Fair. I stood up. You want to talk about fair? You stood at your grandmother's funeral, my mother's funeral, and the first thing you did afterward was calculate how much extra money you could get from me because I wasn't supporting her anymore. What kind of person does that? Natalie's face was red now. Her own tears were starting. You're making me sound like a monster. No, Natalie. I'm finally seeing you clearly. And I'm done. Done with what? Done with all of it. Done being your bank. Done being your safety net. Done setting myself on fire to keep you warm. She stood up too, her voice rising. So what, you're abandoning me? You're just going to cut me off? Yes. Mom, I can't survive without your help. Do you understand that? I'll lose everything. Then maybe, I said quietly, it's time you learned to build something yourself. She stared at me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out which approach would work. Tears? Anger? Guilt? You know what? She said finally, her voice turning cold. This is so typical. You've never really been there for me. You were always at the hospital, always working, always choosing strangers over your own family. And now, when I finally need you, you're abandoning me. Just like Dad did. I worked all those hours for you. To give you the life you wanted. I never asked for that. I asked for a mother. I asked for someone to actually be present. But you weren't. And now you want credit for what? For money? Congratulations, Mom. You were a great ATM. But you were a terrible mother. The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But underneath the pain, I felt something else, clarity. You're right, I said, and she looked surprised. I wasn't perfect. I worked too much. I wasn't home enough. But I loved you with everything I had. And you know what you did with that love? You weaponized it. You learned exactly which buttons to push. Exactly what to say to make me feel guilty enough to keep giving. That's not. Let me finish. You said the worst thing I could do was abandon you. But that's not quite right, is it? What you actually said to your friend, what you meant, is that the best thing I could do for you is die. Because then you'd get the inheritance without having to deal with me at all. Without having to pretend to care. Her face went white. I never said that. You said I was inconvenient. That I was needy. That you ignored my calls until you needed something. If that's not wishing I was gone, what is it? She was crying now, real tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or from fear of losing her financial support. The joint account is closed, I said. The condo is in my name, and you have 30 days to move out. I'm removing myself as co-signer from your debts through fraud claims because you forged my signature. I've changed my will. When I die, everything I have goes to charity. You won't get a single cent. Mom, please. I'm not done. Here's what else is going to happen. You're not going to call me. You're not going to text. You're not going to show up at my door or my workplace. If you try to contact me, I will pursue a restraining order. Do you understand? You can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. And what she saw must have convinced her, because her expression changed from pleading to something harder. Fine, she said, her voice bitter. Fine. You want to throw away your only daughter over money? You want to die alone with nobody who cares about you? Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you're old and sick and have nobody. I won't, I said. Because I already am old. I already am sick. My knees are shot, my back is destroyed, and I have nothing to show for 40 years of work except debt and exhaustion. And you know what? Even with all that, I'll still have more peace alone than I ever had trying to earn love from someone who only saw me as a wallet. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. At the last second, she turned back. I hope you're happy, Mom. I hope this is what you wanted. What I wanted, I said, was a daughter who loved me. What I got was an expensive lesson in self-respect. She slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. I stood there in the silence that followed, and then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, phone calls, and finalizing details. Jessica Rothstein was as good as her word. The eviction notice was filed. The fraud claims were submitted. My will was changed and notarized. I closed the joint account and opened a new checking account in my name only at a different bank. I changed all my passwords, set up alerts on my credit reports, and locked down every financial account I had. Christmas Day, I spent alone. I'd been invited to a colleague's house, but I declined. I needed the quiet. I needed to sit with what I'd done and feel all of it. The grief, the relief, the anger, the peace. I made myself a small turkey breast. I watched old movies. I cried a little. And I felt, for the first time in decades, like I could breathe fully. Natalie tried to contact me 17 times in the first week. Calls from different numbers. Text messages from friends' phones. An email with the subject line, "Please, Mom, we need to talk." I deleted them all without reading past the first line. She showed up at my house twice. The first time, I didn't answer the door. The second time, I called the police. They came and explained to her that she needed to leave. She screamed at me through the door that I was cruel, that I'd regret this, that I was destroying our family. The officer, a woman probably in her 30s, looked at me with sympathy. "Ma'am, do you want to pursue a restraining order?" "Not yet," I said. "But if she comes back again, yes." She didn't come back after that. The eviction was finalized in mid-January. I didn't attend. I sent Jessica in my place. I heard later that Natalie had to move into a studio apartment in a less desirable neighborhood, that she'd sold most of her furniture to pay the moving costs. A part of me, a very small part, felt sad about that. But the larger part remembered her laughing on that recording, remembered her words. It's kind of sad, actually, but it works for me. The credit card companies and the loan company were harder to deal with. Even with evidence of forgery, they wanted to pursue collection against me as the co-signer. Jessica fought them hard, and eventually we reached settlements. I paid $8,000 total to resolve everything, far less than the full amount. It wiped out the last of my savings, but it was worth it to be free. In February, I made a decision. I was done with Chicago. This city held too many memories, too much pain. I needed a fresh start. I put my house on the market. It sold in 3 weeks for $340,000, more than I'd expected. After paying off my mortgage and the real estate fees, I cleared $115,000. I also sold the condo. It sold for less than I'd paid, but enough to clear the remaining mortgage. I broke even on it, which felt like a small miracle. With $115,000 in my pocket and nothing tying me to Chicago, I started looking for a place to retire. Really retire, not in 11 years, but now. I found a small house in Asheville, North Carolina. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a little garden in the back, and a front porch perfect for morning coffee. It cost $180,000. I put down $90,000 and took out a small mortgage I could easily cover with my pension and Social Security once I started drawing it. I gave my notice at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. After 38 years, I was leaving. My colleagues threw me a small retirement party. Many of them knew bits and pieces of what had happened with Natalie. They hugged me, wished me well, told me I deserved peace. My supervisor, Dr. Patel, pulled me aside. "Margaret, I've known you for 20 years. I've never seen you put yourself first. I'm proud of you." That made me cry more than anything else. I moved to Asheville in early March. The house was perfect. Small enough to manage on my own, but comfortable. The neighborhood was quiet, full of retirees and young families. People waved when they walked by. The pace of life was slower, gentler. I furnished the house simply, mostly with secondhand furniture from local shops. I didn't need much. I planted tomatoes and herbs in the garden. I joined a local book club at the library. I started taking yoga classes, real ones, not expensive ones, just a $10 community center class on Tuesday mornings. For the first time since I was a young woman, I had time. Time to read. Time to think. Time to heal. In April, for months after I'd cut Natalie off, I received a letter. Not an email, a real letter, handwritten on nice paper. I almost threw it away without opening it. But something made me pause. I sat on my porch, holding that envelope, and finally I opened it. "Mom, I know you told me not to contact you, and I'm sorry for breaking that boundary. But I need to say some things, and I need you to hear them. You were right. About everything. I've spent the last 4 months living in a tiny apartment, working 2 jobs just to make rent. I'm a hostess at a restaurant, and I clean houses on weekends. It's exhausting. It's humiliating. And for the first time in my life, I understand what you went through. I was spoiled. I was entitled. I was cruel. I took advantage of your love and your guilt, and I didn't care how much it hurt you." I heard the recording Marcus made. Jessica played it for me during one of the legal proceedings. Hearing myself laugh about manipulating you, hearing how callous I sounded, I was disgusted with myself. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to take me back into your life. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I also need you to know that you were a good mother. You were there for me more than I deserved. The fact that you worked so much wasn't abandonment, it was sacrifice. I see that now. I hope you're happy wherever you are. I hope you're finally living for yourself. You earned it. Love, Natalie. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday, years from now, when enough healing had happened on both sides, we could have a conversation. Maybe we could rebuild something small and careful and boundaried. But not now. Now is for me. Today, 8 months after I left Chicago, I wake up every morning to birdsong instead of alarm clocks. I make my coffee slowly, savoring it, and sit on my porch watching the sunrise over the mountains. My knees still hurt, but less than before. The stress that lived in my shoulders for decades has slowly released. I'm sleeping through the night for the first time in years. I've made friends here in Asheville. Real friends, people who know me as Margaret, not as someone's mother or someone's bank account. We have game nights, potluck dinners, hiking trips in the mountains. I volunteer at a free health clinic 2 days a week, using my nursing skills to help people who can't afford care. It's rewarding in a way my hospital work never was, because I'm doing it by choice, not out of financial necessity. I'm dating someone. His name is Robert. He's a retired teacher, a widower like me in a way. We met at the book club. It's nothing serious yet, but it's nice. He's kind. He pays for his own coffee. He doesn't need me to fix his life. I've started painting, something I always wanted to try, but never had time for. I'm terrible at it, but it doesn't matter. It's for me, not for anyone else. I'm living on my pension and Social Security, and it's enough. More than enough, because I'm not supporting anyone else. My little house is paid off. I have no debt. For the first time in my adult life, I'm financially stable. I think about Natalie sometimes. I wonder how she's doing. I hope she's learning, growing, becoming someone better. But I don't reach out. I've learned that you can love someone and still protect yourself from them. That boundaries aren't cruelty, they're self-preservation. Looking back on my life, I can see so clearly where I went wrong. I confused providing with parenting. I thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, loved enough, I could make up for my absences, for my imperfections, for my humanity. But children don't need perfect parents. They need present parents. They need parents who teach them that love includes limits, that care includes consequences. That support doesn't mean removing every obstacle from their path. I taught Natalie that love means giving until you have nothing left, that being a good mother means being a martyr. I taught her that my needs didn't matter, that my exhaustion didn't matter, that my future didn't matter. And she learned those lessons perfectly. The hardest truth I've had to accept is that I created the dynamic I suffered under. Not because I was a bad person, but because I was so desperate to be a good mother that I forgot to be a whole person. I lost myself in motherhood. I became nothing but a resource, a solution, a backup plan. And when you reduce yourself to a function, you can't be surprised when people treat you like one. But here's what I've learned. It's never too late to remember who you are. It's never too late to reclaim your life. It's never too late to say no more. I paid a high price for my freedom. I lost my daughter, or at least the relationship I thought we had. I lost years of my life to exhaustion and exploitation. I nearly lost my ability to retire with dignity. But I gained something more valuable, myself.